Welcome, everyone. My name is Joseph Coleman to week 4 office hours. How you doing, Lance?
I'm doing great. It's great to be here today. Beautiful day in Arkansas.
It is, yeah. Bob is in Puerto Rico actually right now for a conference. He's playing hooky, so it's just us two today. But we can, I think we can handle it. Let's hop right into the polls, Mike. How often is an equity injection required on your SBA loan requests?
Part of the reason I asked the question is this is such an important area of documentation for an SBA loan closer. Making sure that your equity injection is verified and making sure that you document that it actually occurs. Guys, if you look at the SOP, if you don't properly verify and document your equity injection, SBA can make the assumption that that's what caused the default if that loan in fact defaults.
It seems that majority of more than half of the deals are required.
Well, again, I just want to emphasize the critical importance of properly verifying and documenting the equity injection. I did one on a larger SBA deal. It was a business acquisition loan and had a stack of papers that thick to document the existence of that amount of cash to be injected, and also a substantial amount of documentation making sure that I verified that it was actually put in.
Let's go to the second one. If an SBA borrower is making a $250,000 equity injection from a cash account, how many statements do you require to verify equity injection? Monthly statements.
And quite honestly, there is a correct answer here. Actually, there are a couple answers that I think are good answers. You want to make sure SBA requires that you document that the money exists. I mean, and show where it's coming from. So, and everybody got it correct. We've got a great group.
Yep.
You want to have at least 2 months worth of statements to verify that the money exists. If you do more than 2, that's even better. But at least 2 months statements. If they say it's coming out of a stock account, you want to get a couple months statements that show a balance existing in equal to or in excess of the amount to be injected. If it's just a savings account, you want 2 month statements. Again, 2 is what's required. If you want to go beyond that, that certainly is your choice. But again, the importance of properly documenting that equity injection cannot be overlooked.
Right. What is the average cost of a certified business appraisal for a SBA business acquisition loan at your bank?
And I was just curious about this. I've just recently done 2 larger business acquisition loans, used 2 different services for the business appraisal, and had 2 very different prices on that business appraisal. They were pretty similar in content, and I was just curious what everybody else is having to pay for those business appraisals. And it does look like they're in line, 25% under 2,500, 75% between 25 and 5. My 2 were, one was $3,000 and one was $5,000.
Let's see. One more. How often are standby agreements needed on your SBA deals to create an equity injection from owner financing?
This is another important area of documentation. If your equity injection is created by owner financing that's on standby, this is another critical area to document properly, and just curious how often people deal with that. It looks like quite a few people have dealt with it.
Great. We have a question, and just a reminder, everyone, you can send questions throughout the week to me personally or Lance, and we love answering them. And let's go to it now. It's on
As Joseph will share with you, we'll answer your question when you send it, and then we'll discuss it during the office hour session.
Right, yeah. So she's talking about a deal that I'm currently working on, and the borrower is an EPC that is wholly owned by the OC. The 1919 forms that I have asked for are for the members of the OC. Have I properly documented my file? I have 10 members, all of which own less than 20% of the business.
They have properly documented the file. You want to be careful when you're doing EPC OC loans and make sure you get the 1919s. I guess, got caught off guard on one I was working on where there was a buyer of a business, and that buyer, the owner, the 100% owner, was not going to be active in the day-to-day operation of the business. And SBA came back to me and wanted a 1919 on the operations manager who would be active on a day-to-day basis in the business. And I had to step back, take another look at the 5010-5H, and sure enough, it was a requirement. So getting your 1919s, making sure that you run the CAVERS report on all those people, that you get a 1919 on. Also, the CAVERS reports are going to run it on all the entities, the borrowing entity or any affiliates, but making sure you properly document your SBA loan file, and in this particular case where you have an EPC that's wholly owned by the operating company, getting 1919s on the members was the correct thing to do. It also is it's a challenge because SBA says only those people who have 20% or more ownership are required to guarantee the loan, but if you have a situation where no one has 20%, in this particular case 10 members, and let's just say they all had 10%, you're going to need to do the 1919 on all 10 members.
Great. And we talk about 1919 in week 5, but let's go to week 4. What did we talk about last week?
Week 4, we talked a lot about the equity injection. Actually, the first 4 modules centered around the equity injection, making sure to properly verify it, making sure to properly document it. Equity injection fraud is a very important area for the SBA. The Inspector General's office takes a close look at that. So it's critically important to properly document your equity injection, as well as if you're using owner financing with a standby as part of the equity injection, you want to make sure and properly document that as well. We talked about business acquisition loans. It seems that I am seeing a lot of business acquisition loan opportunities. Part of that's because there's capital out there, Joseph. You've got people that have cash that, they look at putting it in a bank, and the bank's going to pay them 0.25% for that deposit. So you've got a lot of people with money that's looking for a home. So that's part of the driver for seeing a lot of business acquisition activity. It's important to understand the requirements there. There is a specific requirement when you have a lot of blue sky for a certain amount of equity injection that the SOP 5010 5H requires. It's also important to understand the business appraisal rules and when you need to order a business appraisal on a business acquisition loan.
Great. And upcoming, let's see what we're talking about next week.
Week 5, we're going to take a look at some forms. The SBA loan checklist, I think, is a critical form. I just got an approval today and handed off an SBA file to my loan processor to get it ready for closing, and I always have the SBA loan checklist in the front and have it set up in the 10-tab format so they can easily walk through and prepare for closing. We talk about the 1919. It's such an important form in terms of the borrowers and guarantors eligibility. The 912, Joseph, it's hard for me because having worked SBA loans since 1983, the largest portion of my career with SBA loans, we had to have a 912 on every guarantor, right. But that changed recently, and it's only required when you have a yes answer to question 2 and 3 on the 1919. We talk about the 159, the compensation form related to packaging assistance, how to prepare it. It's very important to get the 159s prepared when the borrower is paying for packaging assistance or paying a broker for a referral. It's critical to get it completed and submitted to SBA at the proper time. We talk about SBA Express loans and some of the differences. Actually, Joseph, in my bank, SBA Express lending is the fastest growing area of SBA lending for us. And then we talk about the note and guarantee, the SBA Form 147 and 148.
Is that because you started your SBA Express lending program? Is that?
Well, actually, we've been involved in SBA Express lending for about 2 years, but what's happened, and the closers can help with this process, as you educate your lenders and business development officers on the SBA Express program, they really embrace it because customer service comes from delivering a quick loan product to a good small business borrower, and the SBA Express program is certainly one way to do that. You know, I have one that we $350,000 loan that we got approved at our committee, that we went through the process of getting our SBA loan number by putting it in E-Tran, created the authorization, pretty simple loan. We moved to close within. We did all of that, Joseph, in 4 days.
Awesome. We should have these videos up by midnight tonight. If not, we'll get them up on Monday. We always shoot for Friday, so you guys can check it out over the weekend. But you will get a notification email when that's sent. We have one question, Lance. When there is a seller carryback for cash injection, can the note be between the seller and the principal versus the borrower?
You know, that's a good question, and I don't see. So we've got a seller financing to a guarantor.
Seller carryback for cash injection. Can the note be between the seller and the principal versus the borrower?
It's a complicated matter because you're going to have a note from the seller to a guarantor who's going to turn around and inject it into the business. The SOP doesn't really cover this. My indication, the best practice would be the note from the seller to the borrower, because there are parts of the SOP that indicate that money injected by a guarantor that's borrowed, that has an expectation for repayment, couldn't be counted as an equity injection. But I could also see a note from the seller to a guarantor with a standby agreement in place. My thoughts are you can do it. It's not specifically talked about in the 5010, but if you have a note from the seller to a guarantor with a standby, and there's no expectation of repayment, and the guarantor is injecting it into the business, I don't see where we're going to have an issue with that. Now, my recommendation on that would be to do it, process it GP, don't process it PLP. Any time that I reach a gray area in the SOP, I like to process it as a GP loan and let SBA give some direction on that. If you process it as GP and SBA says it's okay, then you're good to go.
And if you need to follow up with that question, then just send an email to me or Lance or Bob, and we'll go for it more.
Actually, Joseph, I think they'll be fine, but my recommendation would be to process it GP and get SBA's blessing on it.
Yeah, cool. Oh wait, I think she said thank you. Okay. All right, Lance. Have a good weekend. Enjoy the Super Bowl this weekend, and we'll see you guys next week on Friday. Bob should be back, and that's all we have for you. Thanks, guys.
Have a great weekend. Thank you.